to identify is, who should the next generation be? What should this person look like? Where am I going to find them? So many questions to answer, and there's so many people out there. Where do we even begin? I like to start by figuring out, what do you want? You as a business owner. You need to know exactly what you want in order to identify who will fit that role best to take over, manage, or purchase your business from you. When we think about who should that next generation be, the first thing that comes to mind is whether or not it should be a family member. Is there someone in your family that might be interested in taking over this business? A son or a daughter, or maybe your niece or a nephew. Ideally, you're looking for someone who is perhaps a generation below you, so that you know they're in it for the long haul. In most cases, when we're trying to sell or transfer our businesses, we're ideally looking for a source of retirement income. So in order to ensure that we get that retirement income, we need to make sure that the next generation we're bringing on will be there for a while and also has all of the capabilities to be profitable to pay us out. Now, family is what happens a lot on farms. We see a lot of farms that continue with family legacies. Now, while family is great for a lot of reasons, including commitment to the business, in most cases, they're willing to work really long hours. They're very dedicated. You know them very well. You know their tricks or tips or quirks or anything like that. So those are probably some of the pros of having family. One of the cons to having family, of course, is you know them so well. That can be a bit of a struggle. In addition to that, at times we don't communicate with our family as well as we should. Sometimes relationships are too informal, where they should be a little bit more business. We end up treating them a little bit more like friends or family. So there are pluses and minuses to having family, of course. What you need to decide is whether or not those family members that you might look at bringing into the business, how will bringing them in affect your family relationship with them? How do you want it to change? Do you not want it to change? Is that a priority? All of those should be identified before discussing or bringing them into some of these conversations. Of course, the other option is non-family. So those are outside individuals, people not related to you. These people sometimes are a little bit harder to find. That's one of the cons of trying to look outside of the family base. They may be located somewhere else, for example, and depending on where you're looking or where your business is located, it may or may not make sense for them to move to that location or not. One of the bigger struggles we have with this region in the 6 counties of the North Country is we're not near any major metropolitan areas. So a lot of young people who are looking to be connected to other young people, connected to cities, won't have that opportunity moving into one of these 6 counties, or at least not on a large enough scale for most young people's liking. So that can be tricky when trying to find non-family. Again, on the flip side of this is some of the pros associated with family is usually those relationships are very formal. When we're dealing with non-family or bringing in non-family partners, we tend to be very cautious of writing everything down, making sure that we've identified everything contractually. We do everything very business-like, which is a good thing. One of the downsides to non-family, sometimes those folks who aren't related or grew up with the business may not be as dedicated or as committed to the business. That's not necessarily true by any stretch of the imagination, but they don't have the inherent memories of growing up around that business and that automatic love for it. So the other thing I want to address when we talk about who should the next generation be, who should this person be, is how much of an age gap we're looking at. Traditionally, in farming businesses, we've seen the businesses pass from father to son or from father to daughter, usually with about a 30-year age gap in there. Now, that can be a bit problematic these days. Not only farming, but all other industries are changing so quickly. Businesses grow and develop, technology changes at such a fast pace that realistically to have 30 years in between the generations might actually be too long now. what we've seen some businesses and some larger businesses turn to is they're turning over CEOs or CFOs or head type management every 10 to 15 years for a few different reasons. One of those is because everything's changing so quickly. So in order to stay relevant, it's very difficult. In addition, the pressures and stresses of these positions are great. To be able to weather the storm for 30 years is sort of an insurmountable task nowadays. And I commend all of those who have done it, absolutely. However, going forward, it might not make sense to have one generation at the helm for 30 years. So when we think about how are we going to decide who this person should be, obviously we want someone who has enough experience and know how to do the job, so they've had enough outside experience. But we also don't want to pick someone who's towards the end of their career, who might only have 5 years left till they want to retire. So this is a very delicate balance, and it's going to change depending on the specific needs of your business. So what should be required of this person? So let's say we've identified who we're looking for. Now, what should be required of them to enter into this business? Now, there's a lot of different options here. And with everything we talk about tonight, you can pretty much do this any way you want. I'm just trying to give you examples of what I've seen other agricultural businesses do or what we've seen other industries do. So when we think about what should be required, in a lot of cases, we may want to require some level of education. That could mean college, or it could not mean college. We may want to require that they've had some life experience. So I like to call that my age number. We might be looking for someone who is maybe a little bit older, into their mid-30s or early 40s, or perhaps your business is in need of someone really young and fresh blood. So whatever life experience you're looking for, make sure you're identifying what would be best for the financial health and the overall health of your business. So other work experience, because college is certainly not the do-all, end-all of anything. So having other outside work experiences is really, really important. We see this especially on farming operations. A lot of times, those who are looking to come back to the farm have worked on that farm all growing up. They've been there their whole life. That was their first job. So we really want to see those young people go out and work for other people. Get some different experiences, understand what it's like to have a boss that isn't family. For a few different reasons. One of them is obviously to learn from those businesses and be able to bring different perspectives back home if they decide to do that. The second is they may decide and realize that working for family is not for them, or working at the operation that they've been working at their whole life may not be what they want to do forever. Now, this may seem like a detriment to us as business owners to have, these young people go experience different things and then decide they don't want to come back to your business. However, ultimately, it's better to have them know and understand their options early. So if they do decide to come back and be a part of your business, it's because it's their highest and best option. It's what they want to do the most. It's not just the only experience they've had. We find that those individuals that choose from more experiences, they tend to be more committed, they're more focused, they don't feel like they were forced into coming back or it was their only option. Now, they may need to have some certifications depending on your specific business. Obviously, your top levels of management will sometimes hold certifications for the entire company that are needed, whether those be safety certifications, whether they be training certifications, whether they be animal handling certifications. Those need to be considered when we're looking at bringing on a next generation. Business training, I always identify this as an area that we need to make sure folks have if they're going to come into being an owner. There is a required level of financial knowledge, no matter what size or scale of business that you are operating, that you want this next generation to have. They need to be able to understand how the books work, how the money works, how they should be managing those factors before they come back to the business ideally. Of course, they can learn as they go a little bit, but they need to have a base knowledge to be able to understand, most importantly, of course, how they're going to make the business profitable to pay the senior generation their value that they need to get out. And finally, sometimes in some cases, especially on farms, we see that we want family to return to the business. It's an important personal moral priority that, you know, the business stays in the family. When we see folks looking at estate planning, for example, in agriculture, we've seen a really big increase in the use of trusts as a vehicle to ensure that the business has the opportunity to be passed to family members, even in the event of an early death or an early tragedy. So, you know, businesses are using these trusts in order to dictate who can take over the business should something happen to them, maybe untimely or before they were ready to transfer it over. Or you may want to require that it's not family. You may want your family life to be completely separate from the business. There are businesses out there that have moved towards this trend that have traditionally been family members at top level ownership, that believe that having more professional relationships and separating business and family has ultimately been a good thing for them. Obviously, there's no right or wrong answer for any of this, but these are things to consider when you're looking at finding the next generation. So where can you find these people? Where are they hiding? This is a great question. So I always recommend looking at college or university programs. This includes technical programs as well. A lot of times folks have moved on to an educational program because they don't have enough experience, or they want to know more about that topic area, and they obviously want to end up working in that industry. But in a lot of cases, they may not have a business to come home to. Obviously, in agriculture specifically, we continue to be in a situation where a large portion of business owners are retiring. The silver tsunami is definitely hitting agriculture, perhaps even harder than some other industries, when the average age of the farmer is getting ready to crest to 60. So with that being said, there are less and less individuals involved in farming. Less and less people have direct family members who owned a farm or worked on a farm. This means that there's a number of kids out there getting into the industry that have no familial connection. They're going to college to help find these contacts to get them into the industry. So making sure that you as a business know what universities in your area have agricultural programs or have programs specific to your industry, and getting to know the professors at those universities. Telling them, you know, hey, I have a business here. I'm going to be looking to retire in the next few years. If you know of or see any kids that come through the program that you think might be a good fit to take over, please, you know, make sure we get connected. Job or career fairs are another great place to look for individuals. Local job and career fairs afford you the opportunity to see what's in your local applicant pool or ownership pool. So this gives you people who are usually already committed to living in the area, which is a huge win. And searching for those through either high schools or chambers of commerce are a great way to find those. Word of mouth or referral is also another very popular choice in agriculture. We're a pretty connected industry in that most everybody knows what's going on with everybody else. What that means, though, is that as you interact with other folks in your industry, mentioning to them, we may have, you know, a position opening up, or we may be retiring soon. Would you know of anybody who might want to work into an ownership position? They might have a contact for you, and they might know that person personally, which is a big win. They can tell you, you know, yes, that person would be a great fit, or no, I don't know anybody right now. So anybody who's going to be able to give you a personal reference is obviously even one step ahead of just meeting someone from an application. So industry-specific websites as well are another way to help you find the next generation, or another place to look for them. An example of this would be NOFA, New York. So they have a specific section of their website. They're an organic certification group, and they have a section of their website that's classifieds employment offered. So in this section, farms can literally write in a classified ad saying, you know, we're looking for someone to take over the farm, or we're looking for a key manager. This is where we're at. This is how many cows we milk. And so then folks can go onto that website and see those classifieds and respond to them should they be interested in that position. Obviously, these are available through other industries as well. I will do a shameless plug for the program that I run specifically. It's called the Northern New York Internship and Management Program. It is an online-based program, and what we actually offer, I offer my services to come to the farm, to you, to help you develop a full-time or an internship job posting. Because like I talked about in the beginning, we need to really identify what we're looking for, who that person should be, and really detail outline how this would look if they came into the business, and what their opportunities are, what the farm looks like. This day and age with lots, or at least 3 generations interacting in the workplace, everybody has different priorities. But when we're talking about recruiting millennials, for example, they like to have a lot of detail. They want to know, what am I getting into? They want to be able to see it on the computer before they even talk on the phone with you. This is very different from the way the baby boomer generation interacts. So we need to make sure that we're tailoring our search to the people that we're looking for. So with this program that I manage, I come out to the farm. I can help you get through a job description that outlines the type of person, their responsibilities, what the expectations are, what your farm looks like. We get it posted online. That is sent to 8 different universities on a regular basis, so the students are able to scroll through the different job offerings and apply to you directly through the website. So the great part is you're not waiting on a middle person. If a student's interested, they can fill out a basic application, they hit send, and it goes right to your email. So what that means is the applications are very open. They really just want to get a sense of what this student is interested in, what their long-term goals are, to see if they would even be a worthwhile candidate to pursue further than just a conversation. What this allows you to do is kind of screen your applicants. So we set it up this way, thinking that you could read through and say, well, you know, this person's not really willing to live in our area, or maybe they don't fit with our farm size or our style of farming. So I can just send them a note back and say, you know, thank you very much for your application, but we don't feel like you'd be a good fit at this time. This way, you haven't done a full application process. No one is committed to anything beyond just an email meeting, so to speak. So that is the program that we offer specifically. Again, we just went over the other ways to do that through colleges and universities, job fairs, and then industry-specific websites. So I'm going to say it again. I think you guys are probably getting the point by now. It's really, really important to outline exactly what you're looking for from this person. A little transparency goes a long way in finding the right person. So with that, that is the website that you can use to check out our job postings, in addition to just see the format of how we have students apply as well. When we talk about transparency and having everything on the table, this is where I see one of the big stumbling blocks when we start to go down the path of looking at transferring to the next generation. A lot of times I'll work with farms where they have a key young person who is a good manager already, and they may want to be exploring some ownership options. So the tough part is, because they've been at the farm already for a while, it's sometimes assumed that they have a level of knowledge about either, you know, the business or the transfer process or the financials that they may not actually have. We need to make sure we start from step 1 and say, you know, okay, you as a person on this farm, you have been in this role. We're looking to really change this role. Here is exactly what this role will look like. Here are the exact expectations. Here's what we're thinking is going to happen. And what needs to happen then is that person needs to have an opportunity to say, yes, this works for me, or no, I need some different things mixed in there. It needs to be a 2-way conversation. But it's really hard to start that conversation if they don't know what you're looking for as a business owner. When should I start looking for the next generation? I can't stress this enough. yesterday. It always takes a lot longer than we think it will to recruit this next generation. These are relationships that need to develop over time when you're talking about transferring a business. It doesn't happen in the span of a month or 6 months or 12 months even. I would highly recommend that taking interns regularly is a really good exercise in practicing this process. What this allows you to do is it allows you to test drive an individual, allows them to test drive your business, and it creates sort of a feeder program. Ideally, from having interns, you can get key managers into your business or identify potential individuals who might be interested in coming back maybe after holding a job somewhere else for a couple of years. So in order to transfer a business effectively while keeping tax implications in mind and, hopefully to the effect that everyone feels good about it, really takes 5 to 10 years minimum. If you're talking about from the point that you start thinking about this and planning it until the point that you get to be fully retired and don't have to show up to work and aren't liable for anything associated with the business, I would say maybe even the minimum should be on the higher end of 10 years. So if you're looking to retire soon, it's important that you really get started with this process sooner rather than later. If you figure identifying a person can take 6 months to a year, having discussions or negotiations with them can take 6 months to a year, then you may want to have a trial period where they're just working in your business for a period of time. So these delicate relationships take time, and it's important to try to accept that and understand that and plan accordingly so you don't feel rushed, you don't feel like you have to identify a person that may not actually be a good fit, and you feel like the business is in capable hands. So the last question I have here is, why should I recruit a next generation? And I have this photo up here because you're the person with your boots in the mud. You know what's going on in your business. So to me, I would say that you recruiting the next generation as a business owner is a good option, because your other option is to really sell the business for a cash value at retirement and just exit really quickly and cleanly, which is fine. That's a great option for some folks, and I definitely don't want to discourage away from that if that's what you're thinking. However, there can be some negative tax implications depending on how you've done your tax planning over the years of selling it all outright, whereas recruiting a next generation, you may be able to sell the business over time. In addition, there could be disappointment of clients of just selling the business or selling the assets, for example, and less offered in the community, that it may be that business doesn't continue anymore, whether it's a farming business or other industry. Those are kind of the negative sides of just selling the business outright. So why you should do it as opposed to hiring someone else or letting someone else do it for you. You know your business best. You're the person that you will want this new individual to learn from. So really, you identifying what the business needs and then looking for that person gives it its best shot to be ultimately profitable in the future, and then profitable enough to hopefully fund your retirement. You also could hire a professional to help with this. There are headhunters out there. As far as agriculture is concerned, we don't see this a lot with farming businesses just yet. It may become more common in the future as there is a smaller and smaller pool of people who are interested or associated with agriculture. So that is always an option. Of course, we want to make sure whoever you decide to work with as a professional or a headhunter or something like that, that you spend a lot of time talking with them about exactly what your business wants and needs. So how do I go about recruiting someone? This is kind of the basics of it, because ultimately everybody wants to get to that goal of retirement, right? Where you have fully, sold or transferred the business and are able to enjoy your lifetime of hard work doing whatever it is you would like to do. So my recommendation for when you think about recruiting is to always start with a basic working relationship. Bring that person on as an employee, see if you guys can have that sort of relationship going on for a lot of different reasons. It gives them a chance to see ground level of your business to understand exactly how it works. It can earn some personal deposits or personal capital with employees. And it really shows that they're committed to understanding the ins and outs, rolling up their sleeves and getting dirty, and learning about this with you. Then I would look at exploring more of a management piece. So if that person succeeds at really getting through the ins and outs, the basics of the business, then it's on to the next level. Can they manage? Can they manage whether it be animals or people or the books, whatever that looks like? You want to see how they do with that. And it may not come all at once. It might come little bits over time, depending on how you want to structure it. From there, moving into ownership. If they prove that they can be a good managing partner, that they can really handle multiple areas at one time, that's when you can start to discuss the options of ownership. They've proven themselves, they have a rapport with employees, they have a rapport with you. That's when you can have those really candid conversations and discussions to say, what do you need for ownership to feel fulfilled? How can we make this work to get this business transferred to you in a time frame that makes you feel successful, but also keeps our business needs in mind. And then plan for stepping back. Once you've got that person in place, they have management roles, they've got an ownership plan, whatever that looks like, whether it be transferring via an LLC or a sale over time, however that goes. Then it's time to really plan for how am I going to exit this business gracefully and in a way that everything keeps running smoothly. So looking at exploring the management options, this could, when you're looking at adding on to someone's plate, this could include special projects. It could include being responsible for employees. It could include heading up a new area or division on your farm or other business. And it could also look like taking on a whole new section of the business as well. But with any of those, we want to make sure that you evaluate and communicate every step of the way. So even when you're talking about exploring the management tasks or adding on management responsibility, that you sit down and have a really good discussion with this person of, here's what I want to give you. I'm giving it to you with the intent that maybe someday we'll look at an ownership option. In addition to that, here's the expectations. Here's how they're different from what you have been doing. And then give them regular feedback. They need to know throughout the process that they're on the right track. A lot of times when I see folks start to transition individuals in a business from employee to management to ownership, we get caught or we stumble when it comes to this piece of communication, evaluation, and feedback. Because it can take so long to get a business transferred over, it's easy for young people or the next generation to feel stuck. They can feel like maybe they haven't made progress, or they don't know if they're being successful enough, or they don't know when they're going to reach the next level of ownership or management. It's really important to communicate what you're thinking as a business owner, what's on deck for this person you're bringing in, and how they can succeed at achieving what these goals that they want to get to. When we look at exploring ownership options, there's tons of questions to answer with this. Will the ownership in the business be gifted or bought in cash? Or will it be bought in what we call time served or sweat equity? So these are all things you need to decide how you want to do this as a business owner. How much cash do I need out of the business to retire? What can I afford to gift? How will gifting benefit my tax situation? So in addition to all of those factors, considering that person on the other end, that next generation, what do they need? Do they need to be able to purchase the business over time? Do they need to be able to purchase it in sweat equity because cash is not flowing such that they can pay you in cash payments? And then, how much gifting should they deserve? So another question associated with this is how much to start? I don't have a great one number for this. What we do see sometimes is kind of two different ways of thinking about that. Is they can purchase in at a small cash rate. So if they have some savings and they want to put in $5,000 into the business to get their equity account started, that's one option. In addition, we've seen individuals who are maybe just bringing in someone who's been on the farm for a long time into an ownership position. We consider some of their past work as sweat equity, and we basically gift them a starting amount to get them into the partnership. So what are the rules if they leave? This is a big thing to know. So of course, before we go down the road of exploring ownership, we need to know what happens if this next generation decides to leave. Vesting schedules are a very popular vehicle for this, to deal with this potential issue. And basically what a vesting schedule does is says, if a next generation comes into the business and is brought in as a really small, let's say even a 1% owner, then over the next 10 years, if they decide to leave the business before they've completed 5 years with ownership, none of their ownership value has to be paid out. So they take basically, a 100% haircut on the value of their ownership. They walk away from the partnership without having to be paid out any equity value. Now, between 5 years and 10 years, they would then have to be paid a proportional amount. In most cases, though, still with a significant haircut. The reason for this being, if you bring in someone from the next generation and it doesn't work out, you don't want to have to be paying them out their equity value when ultimately all you were trying to do in the first place was get your equity out of the business. So that's why we have these vesting schedules. In addition, this causes the next generation to stop and really think, if I do this and if I commit to being in this business and coming into an ownership position, I won't necessarily, if I leave before the end of this business lifetime, I won't be able to walk away with every single dollar of the value that I've invested, because they've invested time and effort and all these things and are getting equity in this business in exchange for it. But of course, if they leave, they won't get all of that in cash value. So what do they earn if they perform well? This is just as important as what happens if they leave. So identifying the rewards for doing the right thing of, if a young person hits certain performance parameters on the farm, do they get more equity in the business gifted to them? And in a lot of cases that's used. Or, do they get a cash bonus if they perform well? Because if that's the vehicle you choose to use. So identifying what happens if they perform well associated with their ownership is just as important as identifying what happens if they leave or if the partnership's not working out. That includes not just for if they choose to leave of their own volition, but if you decide that they're no longer a good fit for your business, identifying how you guys untangle that. How does that happen? Does it one partner just up and get to decide that one day that next generation is out, or is there a due process, or does it need to be voted on by all other partners? So there's a lot of particulars and details to sort out before you even start the ownership process. And again, I can't stress it enough, be sure to evaluate and communicate. This tends to be where the train falls off the tracks. So really sitting down with these folks, going through these details with a fine-tooth comb so they know from the very beginning, this is how to play the game, these are the rules. If we follow the rules, everybody works out okay. We have all these systems in place to help us navigate these choices. And what I really like about making sure that you have all of these particulars laid out is they can help avoid personal conflicts. So stepping back is the last piece. And this is just as crucial as the other parts, honestly. So it's really important to get those folks the management experience, get them the ownership, but then it's just as important for you as the senior generation to truly step back, let that next generation run that business on their own. They need to feel like they have control, total control at some point. They really need to know that the safety net isn't there anymore. So that will mean you leaving or not being a day-to-day presence or having, less and less management decisions over time. Ultimately, if you've entrusted this person to come on as the next generation, you really do believe in them. So at some point, you need to prove that belief to them and say, nope, this is your area. Go ahead. I trust you. And Just like all the other sections, be sure to evaluate and communicate how this is going. And at times, we've seen in businesses where the senior generation tries to step back too quickly, and the junior generation can feel a little bit abandoned. We don't want that either. Of course, that goes two ways, where the senior generation might stick around for a little bit too long and the junior generation is feeling really stifled. So talking to each other, saying, how are you doing? Are you comfortable with where we're at? Are you comfortable with how we've been doing this? What else can we do differently? Obviously, it takes a little bit of compromise, because what one generation may want may not line up with what the other one wants. But being open and expressing what you guys are looking for in a safe setting, in a calm setting, will honestly really help you come to some creative solutions of how, you might not immediately please everybody, but you might find a great middle ground. So who needs to be on your team for finding the next generation and getting the next generation ownership? I like to think about this like a dairy farm, right? So on our dairy farms, we have our whole team of professionals. We've got bankers, we've got nutritionists, we've got lawyers that help us purchase property, we've got consultants that help us evaluate our financials, we've got crop specialists who tell us everything we need to know about our field. So we have all these people who are specialists in their area. It's the same thing when we do a business transfer and trying to bring on the next generation. That's a huge task. We need some specialists in there. So lawyers are a big one for drawing up contracts, reviewing everyone's contracts. I always highly recommend that the next generation retain their own legal counsel for review. Obviously, the senior and junior generation should not be using the same attorney. Bankers may need to play in there, because if you're going to bring on a next generation into a business that may have some debt, the bankers obviously would be the person working with that next generation. So making sure they establish a relationship with that young person you're trying to bring in. Appraisers can help you value the business and also help you decide on a number, perhaps, if you're looking towards that sale mechanism for transferring ownership. Consultants can always help with communication, in addition to evaluating budgets, to make sure if we do bring on the next generation, does the business have the ability to support paying two families as opposed to one family. And then estate planners to make sure that as we transfer and move this business, that the senior generation has their assets protected, whether those assets be cash from the business or retained ownership or future rentals. And then life insurance brokers, they can be brought in to help cover perhaps maybe non-farm family heirs. So when the senior generation is looking to transfer the business to a junior generation, they may have some kids out there that don't belong to the farm and won't ultimately get equity in the farm. However, they still want them to get something. Life insurance is a great vehicle for that. And then retirement planners as well, to make sure that we're looking at the overall impacts of this process of transferring from one generation to the next. How is the senior generation going to manage that money? How are they going to live off of it? And what the plan is as far as reception of that income. And then, of course, us at CCE, we can help you with a variety of those tasks. What I usually do with folks is help be an organizer and a discussion driver. So I can sit down and go over with you to help you identify exactly what you're looking for, and then start to help you look for that in a next generation, in addition to guiding conversations perhaps once that next generation gets brought on. Then we need to bring in the team of all these other people listed on the slide to help make the mechanics happen and get it done. So the take homes that I really want you guys to focus on are deciding what you want is a huge priority. Really having a clear vision of who this next generation should be and what you need from them. So being very specific with that, what does that look like? Is there a certain number of hours a day? Is there an expectation of where they live? Do they need to have so much experience in the business? Do we want them to have other business experiences? Start early. I can't stress this enough. Too often I have farmers coming to me at a point where they're already, 65 years old and really would like to retire within 5 years. Well, it's tough. It takes a lot of time to find the right person. These relationships are really delicate, and bringing someone in to manage your farm business that's been a labor of love for your entire life is a big decision. So I highly recommend starting early, obviously doing that through recruiting interns, promoting key managers within your business, or reaching out to universities early on to see if they have any young people that might not have a business to go back to. Progress slowly. So the flip side to the start early is progress slowly. Really take this step by step. I have yet to see any business, or very many businesses, I should say, really go on the search for a next generation, and within 3 years, they're retired on a beach in Florida. So take your time, make sure that this person is the right fit, give them the opportunity to make sure that you're the right fit for them too. Really check in with them at each step of the progress that we talked about, bringing them on as an employee, letting them do some management, then offering some ownership, checking in at each of those places. Evaluate and communicate often. If you're not by nature a strong communicator, bring in someone who can help you. These are really delicate, really important conversations, though, and will ultimately affect your success at transferring this business, which ultimately affects how much money you get for retirement. All very important things. So we want to make sure that's successful, just like we want to make sure, our crops grow successfully, our animals grow successfully. It's just like anything else we do. So communicating and evaluating what's going on is going to be a very, very important part of this process. So with that, I have no other slides for now. You can email me via the information on the screen, or give me a call if you'd like to set up an appointment to meet with me. I thank you for watching this online video on farm business transfer, and I'll see you next time.